Well, let's get started on the parable of the sower, the soil, and the seed again from Mark 4. If you want, you might grab the Bible and turn to that section. Just hit the pause button and go find one if you'd like. I'm going to do this a little differently than I have the other videos. I'm going to try to string it together so that it's a little more unbroken, but in doing so, it's going to take more than 3 minutes. So here we go. I haven't made any notes. I'm kind of winging it like I would do just in a conversation with some of the guys that I meet with. In what we call the Lord's Prayer, again, that's not really what it should be labeled. It's a conceptual framework for prayer. It starts by saying, "Our Father who are in heaven." In the parable, Jesus starts by saying, "A farmer." That's in the New International Version. I think in the King James, which is what I remember from a kid, it said, "A sower." So whether God is known as a father, a sower, a source, spirit, God is spirit, whatever it is, I'm sensing the intention is that we need to learn how to become very aware of the presence of the farmer, the father, the source, the sower, and spend perhaps 15 or 20 minutes in total silence, just being aware that the farmer is present. That means we shut out as many sounds as possible that our ears might take in. We don't talk. I mean, if we're in the presence of the farmer, the creator of the universe, and we're sitting there together, I can't imagine we'd have much to say. I think we'd be too stunned by the overwhelming impact of being in the presence of God. I don't think we'd have any trouble sitting there for maybe 20 minutes in total silence, not saying anything, not paying attention to anything else going on, and our thoughts would not wander to anything else. That's my understanding of how we start in developing a deep, intimate relationship with God, is we start by spending perhaps 15 to 20 minutes in complete silence. And then the sower wants to plant in our mind some ideas, some seeds, some daily bread. I don't think daily bread had to do with food. If it had to do with food, the prayer wouldn't work in a country where there's famine and there is no food. But when we understand that daily bread has to do with the Creator changing the way we think, the way we reason, the way we process, even our motivations, and has the potential to improve our character, when we realize that daily bread has to do with soul food, the seed has to do with planting ideas in our mind from which we can begin to grow. Now, there's a section in the prayer mentioned in the Sermon on the Mount where we ask for forgiveness for those we have sinned against and that we forgive those who have sinned against us. In the parable, we have 3 types of impediments to good soil. First is emotional hardpack. The seed or the daily bread, the insight hits us, but we can't receive it, we have too much emotional blockage built up. And this is usually in the form of fear, that we've been abandoned in some way, not nurtured adequately, or that we are defective. We carry shame, and this does not allow the truth to penetrate deep into our core. When we have a long history of emotional wounds like this, hardpack, we develop character flaws. We develop ways of coping with our hurt and our fear. It may be procrastination, it may be seduction, it may be manipulation, it may be obsessions of various natures, addictions. It can even be a preoccupation with religious activities, which in themselves are not bad, but overdone, they may simply be ways of avoiding dealing with the potential pain that we encounter. These character flaws morph into all kinds of actions that are closely tied to character traits, and these actions in the parable are called thorns or weeds in some translations. I've had some of this in my own life. I remember about 1981, I was doing some consulting with Christian organizations, and I was speaking at a national conference, the Christian Management Association. And I noticed at this conference that there were some rescue missions present. And I remember saying to God, I'm not sure this is a prayer, but I guess you might call it that. I said to God, I will consult with any Christian organization you want me to, except a rescue mission. Why? Well, because rescue missions have alcoholics, and I was still carrying a great deal of bitterness towards my father, and I wanted nothing to do with being around alcoholics or people who paid attention to alcoholics. So my emotional blockage of fear and bitterness towards my dad was preventing me from being open to the truth that God had for me to be of some assistance to rescue missions if necessary. The second problem with my soil had to do with character flaws. I've had a long history of procrastination when it comes to things where I don't feel very confident in being successful. It also has to do with things where I don't think I'm going to get any real recognition or it won't come very fast. I have a way of procrastinating doing those things and instead do things that bring me more instant gratification and recognition from other people. Those character flaws need to be minimized and, if possible, removed, although they're probably not completely ever removed. And when these things remain, emotional blockages and character flaws, I end up wounding other people. This is tied into forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. My emotional hardpack developed as a result of how I was treated as a kid and the character flaws that I developed out of that. In turn, then, I wound other people. And then the preoccupation with getting recognition, being loved, led me down all kinds of rabbit trails. Those are the thorns. Those are tied in to the rocky character flaws and the emotional hardpack. This is reflected in the prayer. Finally, in the prayer that Jesus taught his disciples, or the elements of prayer, it says to not lead us into temptation, but deliver us from evil. In other words, asking the sower, the farmer, our Father, to not allow us to avoid dealing with these three flaws in our emotional, psychological state of emotional hardpack, character flaws, and thorns. Don't let us get away with staying stuck in that stuff. Help us to break up the temptation to remain emotionally impenetrable to new thoughts, to carry on with character flaws, and to keep doing the things that bring about some measure of self-protection and self-gratification, but really don't enhance our lives or the lives of others. If I can come to the sower, the farmer, my father, and spend 15 or 20 minutes in total silence, then begin to move into a posture of giving up control, opening my hands and my mind to receive my daily bread or the seed of truth, and face those things in detail. I mean, literally writing down what comes to me. Where am I emotionally blocked? Who are the people I have hurt? What are my character flaws? And what can I do about them later today and tomorrow to begin to break up the hardpack, remove the rocks, and do some serious damage to the thorns and the weeds in my life? I can begin to become good soil.